Have you ever wondered why there seems to have been a retelling of Western history much different than has been taught in the past, or why Western culture seems to be driving off the edge of a cliff? The universities seem to have become indoctrination camps rather than centres of learning. Why has academia got it so wrong? Well, wonder no more. For a long time, the assumption of history was that it was a progression of humanity from the cave to the modern man, along with a litany of dates, rulers, and battles. And for many obvious reasons, traditional ideas of history were found to be wanting. However, rather than reconsidering the shortcomings, they were completely discarded and were replaced by the new progressive history, which sought to reimagine the telling of the past. One argument against the traditional approach to telling history was that it failed to explain why things fit together the way they do. Instead, people started to see culture as a system and therefore sought to study how these different systems fit together. But in doing so, they removed the human element and left us with something that tells us little about the past itself. Yet the biggest problem with the traditional view of history, according to these progressives, is that of the mentalist argument. In a nutshell, why did the chicken cross the road? Or, from an archaeological point of view, why did the potter zig and not zag? The argument being that you cannot possibly get inside the head of the chicken or the pot maker to know why. And so they dismiss any and all what they call mentalist arguments as being impossible to know, and therefore they are rejected out of hand, and that's the end of history as we once understood it. But is this right? Is culture represented by the individual or by society? After all, what is culture but the beliefs that the society has? Well, the culture resides in the head of the individual. It isn't defined by them. Instead, it is determined by the group, their ancestors, and even those of the future. As is the collective memory, which it is argued is also preserved in the social body outside of the individual. That knowledge is then passed on from generation to generation, but it's not controlled by any one individual. So are they making a straw man argument, confusing the individual with the shared memory of the group, which can be seen and understood in the archaeological record without needing to get inside the head of the individual potter or the chicken? Unfortunately, the teaching of history has now become little but an abstract pile of systems that few can comprehend, and it adds little to our understanding of ourselves, while also failing, as did the traditional view, in explaining how it all fits together, and are unable to say anything definitively. An example of this is the ongoing academic debate over the origin of the Philistines, who gave their name to modern-day Palestine, the most famous being Goliath, who fought David in the legendary duel. Originally, it was assumed they were of Greek or of Cypriot origin, but this has since come into question because of a few individual items, resulting in some academics refusing to commit at all, despite there being ample cultural evidence, suggesting that the original understanding wasn't far off the mark. And this has, of course, modern-day implications for that region. This progressive approach completely fails to explain why people of the past did what they did, and ultimately we learn nothing from it. Further, much of academia has now been hijacked by modern activists who project their own values onto the past to shape the present. It is emblematic what is going on across the humanities and universities as a whole, and is contributing to the breakdown of our own society. And so, as we toss out most of the traditional history written in the past, we therefore risk making the same mistakes.